Hello, sisters. Lesbian Psychologies, Explorations and Challenges, Section 4, Therapies, Essay Number 15, The Persephone Complex, Incest Dynamics and the Lesbian Preference by Eileen Starzecpyzel. To Persephone. Persephone, Persephone, lost in the cold hell of a black sky, aloneness shines in her eyes, curiously touching, sharp as a bright star reaching me from a great distance. She is an orphan set apart from her sister constellations, with only the dimmest trace of a twinkle. Like watching blue-white stars on a soft night in a high sky, I wonder what she is like. Is she a burning soul, a cold blue light, a magic mystery? Perhaps, if I put my yellow ladder against the sky, I can climb up to Persephone. And we will talk about stars and hell, and how to find love in such dichotomies. E. Starzecpyzel. The myth of Persephone, vulnerable victim and powerful survivor, can be an important allegorical symbol of the incest dynamic as it relates to lesbianism. My approach to incest incorporates this symbol in a framework of object relations psychology that offers a lesbian supportive perspective toward treatment of the adult incest survivor. I use Persephone, a figure of power and mystery that speaks of men's fascination and women's endurance of historic incestuous rape, for the first time, as far as I know, to present the powerful incest survivor. Because of her unique separateness from the mother, which is part of the incest dynamic and which is unusual in the psychological development of girls, the incest survivor is freer to make flexible and creative choices in her life. Nancy Chodorow's work on the matrosexual bond is brought to its logical conclusion, one that Freud hinted at in his works. All women experience love of another woman in the mother-daughter dyad, while most reject lesbianism because of cultural taboos and the overwhelming intensity of the mother-daughter relationship. But because an incest survivor has lived outside the rules since childhood, and because her unique psychological distance from her mother gives her unusual independence, she has the freedom to revert to the matrosexual bond that others must forego. Because all women today live in an androcentric culture that demeans and diminishes so-called female values, I contend that the lesbian choice is in many cases the most healthy and empowered choice for the modern woman, incest notwithstanding. Why are incest survivors more likely to be able to make that choice, while the more traditionally bound, quote-unquote, normally raised female is less likely to make the lesbian choice? In attempting to answer this question, I will draw from 4 years of private practice with approximately 50 individuals in group or individual therapy, of whom about 70% consider themselves to be lesbians. I have integrated all the information from clients with my own experience as a lesbian survivor of father-daughter incest, and with insights from extensive therapy and professional education. I will confine this chapter to the dynamics of father-daughter incest, and will define incest here as a sexualized interchange of indefinite duration that happens between a father or significant other father figure and a child in a family. This does not include siblings or relatives unless they are heavily invested with parental authority. When the incest is covert, as in cases of intrusive voyeurism, sexually colored ridicule of a child, and sexually motivated exposure, it does not involve physical contact. However, the dynamic is always sexual misuse, both of authoritative power and of the legitimate need for closeness over a child who is unable to resist. I propose that 1. All incest creates lifelong trauma for the survivors, but incest survivors have unique strengths that help them to heal strongly with the help of incest-oriented therapy. 2. Father-daughter incest alters the family dynamics and the significant early object relations of the child/victim. 4. Damage to the mother-daughter bond, which always occurs following the seductive interest in the child by the father may be a significant contributing factor in the development of lesbianism as a sexual preference in the adult father-daughter incest survivor. Karen Meiselman cites an incidence of 30% lesbianism in her sample of 23. I observe in my practice that virtually all the lesbian father-daughter incest survivors reveal an intense longing for a nurturing, positive relationship with a woman, which I see as a distinctly separate issue from the survivors' anger at and difficulties with men. 4. When the terrible trauma of incest is healed in therapy, this quote-unquote victim can emerge, like Persephone, resurrected with life and power that, because of inadequate separation from the mother, most women are never able to attain. I draw from Trotterow's work on the significance of mothering for daughters and Freud's view of the pre-Oedipal bond between mother and daughter as longer lasting, 1 to 5 years, than for boys as distinctly sexual, to support and develop my theory of this characteristic post-incest syndrome. The Persephone complex is thus presented here as the most significant personality factor resulting from father-daughter incest, and its resolution as the most important therapeutic objective, regardless of later sexual identity. Object relations, normal family development. Psychologists consider object relations as an internalized perception of the individual that incorporates the separate mental representations of the self and the other object. An individual is affected profoundly by the inner world in which she senses herself in relation to others and develops her inner self-perceptions from the kinds of parental interactions she has experienced in childhood, especially during the early development ages as 1 through 3. Normal object relations develop through a series of stages that the individual passes through. Each of the stages, from normal autism, symbiosis, separation, rapprochement, individuation, to object constancy, provide the individual with a growing sense of herself as good and bad, loved and independent, separate but not alone in the world where people can be trusted to be more or less good and constant in her life. This ability to see oneself as connected to other people who can be trusted and to feel wholeness in oneself and others is critical if a person is to have a healthy, normal start in life. Nancy Trotterow presents a theory that fundamentally states that girls and boys grow up differently and relate differently because both sexes are mothered by women, a thought earlier introduced in Freud's quote-unquote theory of female sexuality. Because the child's first intense emotional / libidinal love object is a woman, it is the smell and feel of a woman to which both sexes are primarily drawn and, according to Freud, feel the first sexual attraction. For boys, the first loved object is therefore of the opposite sex, whereas for girls, the first loved object is of the same sex. Freud went on to struggle with the question of why girls would pull away from the same-sex attraction with their mother to develop an quote-unquote inferior, passive heterosexual attachment to men. Trotterow contends that, indeed, women do not give up their primary attachment to their mothers, but add secondary heterosexual attachments to men later in life, primarily because of internal and external taboos against lesbianism and the deep ambivalence of this love. Trotterow contends that in heterosexual relationships, women create the primary mother bond by intense attachment to their children, and particularly daughters, rather than with their husband or lover. Because a man's masculinity is tied into his being unemotional and therefore less connected with a woman than a woman often wants, a mother is inclined to see her child or daughter as a reflection of her own mother in order to bring the emotional connectedness to her life that she is missing with her husband. This provides for the intense pre-Oedipal bond Freud refers to in his quote-unquote theory of female sexuality. Because it occurs so early in the little girl's development, this primary emotional/sexual bond with woman/mother produces and underlies sexual attachments to men later in life and contributes to continuing pre-Oedipal link into a woman's adult life. For lesbians, this underlying link with a woman remains or later becomes sexually charged. A woman's relationship with her sons is different from that with her daughters, and produces significant personality differences in her male child. This phenomenon has its analog in incest survivor psychology. A mother knows that her son having a penis will grow up to be more like his father than like her. Under the influence of powerful culture and patriarchal pressure, the mother subconsciously relinquishes the boy to his father, who must teach him manhood. At the same time, her relationship to her son takes a strong Oedipal sexual overtones, because she begins to relate to him as a sexual quote-unquote other or quote-unquote little man, while her own husband remains distant and absent from her daily life, as is customary in this culture. This new sexually charged interaction with the mother frightens the boy, who gives up the emotional link with his mother in favor of masculine identity and power. Until he gains a wife/mother substitute later in life, he loses the warmth with his mother that girls retain. I hypothesize that the early loss of mothering, or severance of pre-Oedipal connectedness to mother, not only happens to boys in normal development, but also happens to girls who have been victimized by father-daughter incest. It creates for the boy and the incested girl an unsatisfied longing for mother. Loss of and longing for the early sexual pre-Oedipal bond with the mother may be a significant factor in the development of the choice of women as sexual objects for both a man and a lesbian who has been a victim of incest with her father. Okay, you know what? This is bullshit. I don't feel comfortable like actually just reading the essay outright, because there are people who comment on my videos, like the really like sketchy bisexual ones, like the essays I mean, and they're just like, wow, thanks for reading this, like a great essay. And I'm like, it's not a great essay. I fucking hate this essay. But I'm like, I think for this one, let's like break the format, like I don't give a shit. Oh, Phil, bro, it's been 1,000 years. Freud, garbage, Freud. Yes, very strong agree. Freud is garbage. Beansprout, also Beansprout, it's been 1 billion years. It's worse than that. It's worse than just Freud garbage. It's like Freud garbage about incest. I don't know. I mean, Michelle, I try to take it. I try to take them at their word and like, actually entertain the concepts without being like, this is shit. It's hard. All right. Let me quickly give some reaction to what we've read so far and then we'll keep going. Okay, so yeah, Freud is batshit. I agree. The more I read this book, the more I'm like, WTF is going on. Oh, thanks, Michelle. Hey, Julia. Okay. Some of you guys said some stuff. I'm going to answer that first. Okay. I love how I decided to talk like after Rachel left, so I didn't even get to say hi to Rachel. It's okay. She's just like, this sounds ... troublesome. Yeah. Apostle Person says, my theory is bisexuality. A bi woman repulsed by men after abuse will be more likely to partner with women. A bi woman who is okay with men will play straight. I'm sure she has other ideas. That's interesting. Michelle, I completely freaking agree. Michelle says, the thing is, this assumption that women who are sexually abused are more likely to be lesbians ignores the really ugly fact that so many women are sexually abused. It really can't be used as cause. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I have similar views actually when we talk about sexual abuse leading to dysphoria. I'm like, I don't think it's like necessarily leading to dysphoria, because there's obviously like tons of girls who've been survivors of father-daughter incest who are not trans, right? So we should be like careful. Like, I agree. Yeah. Rachel says this argument bores me. I've heard it too many times. That's kind of what I was thinking when I skimmed the essay. But I was like, when I skimmed the essay, I was like, when I get to the end, I didn't read the last, like the conclusion of the essay, because I thought at least that should be like new to me. But anyway, whatever. Michelle says, also my understanding is that studies of larger numbers showed no correlation. Yeah. Like this woman, I'm pretty sure she calls herself a lesbian and she's also an incest survivor. So isn't it possible that she's just attracting lesbian incest survivors and it's not actually like a corollary, right? Okay, Eileen Starzecpyzel is a psychotherapist in private practice in Manchester, Connecticut. She received her master's degree in counseling psychology from Antioch University and has taught a course on psychology of incest victims in the Antioch graduate program. She has lectured on incest psychology at the Wheeler Clinic and at New Britain General Hospital in Connecticut, and has provided workshops for the New England Women's Studies Conference at Keene State College, for the Gay and Lesbian Counseling Services in Boston, and other organizations in New England. Her articles have been published in Dialogue and the Professional Journal of the Connecticut Association of Counseling and Development, and in Valley Women's Voices, Amherst, Massachusetts, and in Women in Hartford. She has a monthly column in the Hartford-based Journal for the gay community and is working on a book on lesbian families and feminist parenting. Okay, so it doesn't mention here that she's a lesbian, but she does say that she did say that she is a survivor of father-daughter rape. Am I assuming that she's a lesbian? I thought she said that. So the poem is kind of cool. I like the idea of like an archetype that's not just a victim. That's cool. Reductio ad absurdum. Thank you, Michelle. Hey, Corner. Freud is a legit fraud. Well, agreed. Okay. Also, it really rubbed me the wrong way, and I knew this from skimming the essay before, that she talks about lesbianism exclusively as a choice. I don't think there's anywhere in the essay that she like infers that lesbianism can be like an innate static state, whatever, stable state, whatever. So unhappy with that. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, and my own experience as a lesbian survivor of father-daughter incest. Okay, so she calls herself a lesbian, but she keeps saying lesbianism is a choice. So we don't actually know what the fuck her sexual orientation is. All right. I do like the way she describes what incest is, because it's, to me, a very broad yet specific definition. Um, a sexual interchange of indefinite duration that happens between a father or significant other father figure and a child in a family This does not include siblings or relatives unless they are heavily invested with parental authority. When the incest is covert, as in some cases of intrusive voyeurism, sexually colored ridicule of a child, sexually motivated exposure, it does not involve physical contact. However, the dynamic is always sexual misuse, both of authoritative power and of the legitimate need for closeness over a child who is unable to resist. I don't know. The tone of that, like, I mean, she's specifically describing specifically father-daughter incest, but I think the tone of it's good. Okay. I don't know. This whole, like, this has been brought up by multiple authors in this book, right? This is like the 7th fucking essay where they talk about Nancy Chodorow and her pre-Oedipal crap based on Freud's pre-Oedipal crap and all this shit. I'm very not into it. Like, I don't know. It just seems stupid. Anna Freud is no better. The last essay, the one from yesterday, at one point the author quotes Freud, Anna Freud, and Foucault. So it was a fucking great essay, obviously. This is the second longest one in the book. The longest one was the bisexuality one, like essay number 6, I think. Okay. Okay. I don't know how to pronounce this. Is it Demeter? Demeter and Persephone, the incest myth. No, I don't think they're all bisexual essays. There's been like 4 essays that were clearly written by lesbians that were very good. I think when I'm done the book, I'm gonna like do a video being like, these are my Demeter per the USA. Okay, Demeter. Okay. I think when I'm done the book, I'm gonna do like kind of ranking, like a video that's like a ranking of the essays, because some of them I think are really good and like I would recommend, but other ones I'm like, this is like offensive propaganda. Like this one apparently. Okay. Yeah, people are not assholes here, because if they are assholes, I'll kick them out. I don't like assholes. Okay. A useful model of the incest dilemma, which clarifies the development elements of object relations in incest dynamics, can be drawn from the myth of Demeter and Persephone. It poignantly presents the treatment issues with regard to providing a corrective emotional, cognitive, and behavioral experience, the heart of the healing matrix for incest survivors. The story tells us of the mythological goddess Demeter, whose daughter is violently abducted by her uncle, Hades. Persephone, child and sexual slave, is then held in the underworld with the permission of her father, Zeus. Torn from her mother, raped by her uncle, Persephone is seen crying and mourning for her mother, inconsolable over the loss of her mother and the violence she has suffered. Although Hades eventually returns her to Demeter, Persephone is never again young and carefree. She is irrevocably marked by her experience and tricked into returning to Hades seasonally, thereby creating winter on Earth. But because of her familiarity with death, Persephone remains a powerful and mysterious figure in mythology. And because her tragedy stems from incest, Persephone resurrected is a symbol of a powerful incest survivor. She is one who has dealt with death and loss, and whose separateness is a source of creative and individual power in the world. Michelle says, considering the morality and ethics of the Olympian gods and the goddesses, I'm not sure their behavior is a source of much wisdom. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I mean, I haven't finished this section of the essay yet, but to me, this is kind of like, and I get why, because she works specifically with incest survivors and she is an incest survivor, so I get where she's coming from. But it's this kind of thing of just like anybody who suffered is like awesome because they suffered. Or powerful, like fierce or something, like just because she survived a bunch of horrible shit. I'm like, I don't know. That's not a great thing, I don't think. The child, Persephone, experiences herself as torn from her mother and sexually berated with the collusion of her father. Oh, sexually bartered with the collusion of her father. As the stolen child, she suffers intense pain and longing for her mother, while at the same time her mother anguishes and does one who is robbed of her child. As does one who is robbed of her child. This myth parallels the incest dynamic, both for the mother and the child, and the therapeutic dilemma of incest survivors. What robbed of their child? Like, I mean, I guess I should see where she's going with this. Okay. Well, it also offers the image of the powerful Persephone, quote unquote, reborn as the model of healing for all incest survivors. But you literally just, I don't know the Persephone like myth at all. She literally said that after Persephone is kidnapped to hell and raped, that she then is tricked into like going back for that seasonally. So is she like a powerful survivor or is she like an ongoing victim? You know what I'm saying? Also, I don't know. Also, I'm gonna like say stuff, but like if you personally have experience with like incest and you don't want to talk about it, just assume like just don't feel pressure about what I'm saying to you. If you're an incest survivor, right? Most of the women I've talked to who are incest survivors, when they told their mothers when they were young, the mother's reaction was not like, oh, I'm so sad for you and I want to protect you and help you. Most of the women I know, when they did that, their mothers, instead of being like, oh, I've lost my child, like she's describing here, like a mother mourning for the loss of like the innocence of her child, or like, whatever, the like connection with her child or something. Most of the women I know who are survivors of incest, that was not their experience. So, I mean, my experience is anecdotal, but I'm pretty sure her fucking experience is anecdotal based on what she's saying here. So, I don't know. A bunch of you guys are here for the first time in weeks, and I'm reading like the most worst essay ever. Clown World says lots of moms blame their kids for it or say it didn't happen. Yes. Like, I think that's the default position, especially once the women grow up. I know one boy who was an incest survivor from his dad. But it is the same thing. Once they grow up, their parents are kind of like, well, that happened a long time ago. Like, that didn't happen. Michelle, I agree. Michelle says, I think so many mothers are groomed to perfection and focus on anything but the needs of their daughters. It's like, it's mentioned, there is one essay, I think it actually might be the horrible bisexuality essay. There's one section of the horrible bisexuality essay where they talk about, oh no, it's the female socialization lesbian relationship essay, where they talk about how the mother sees her daughter as like an extension of herself. So if she wants to like be like, you need to be tough and like not complain and stuff, she will like train her daughter like, you need to be tough and not complain. Like if the mother has issues with eating, she will train the daughter to have issues with eating, like because she views the daughter as like an extension of self, which doesn't view the son the same way, so she doesn't condition the son to be the same. So I totally fucking agree with that, like phenomenon when it comes to incest specifically. Corner says the trend of analogizing Greek myths and human complexes is so silly. It's pop psychology that they just make up because it's modish without regard for the survivor's reality. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that the concept of like a narrative can be helpful, right? I think the concept of an archetype can be helpful. I think like because when I think of therapy, like on a very basic level, it's like recontextualizing how you think about things or recontextualizing how you behave or react to things, right? Like that's kind of what therapy is. So in that sense, I get how a narrative or an archetype could be helpful. But I also think like this is like way too like she's gone so deep into it, you know? I don't know. We'll see. Also, I need to stop doing a lot of editorializing because this essay is like 40 pages long and we're going to be here for like 6 hours. I don't have anything to do until 8 p.m., but I have been awake since 4:30 in the morning. So I did kind of want to have a nap before that thing. All right. Right. Like Persephone, we experience ourselves as motherless, as irrevocably marked by the incest trauma, as curiously powerful and mysterious, older and wiser than our contemporaries, but also as women who feel different and emotionally alone because of the double wounds of maternal loss and paternal seduction. We have never felt young because of the early blows we suffered, and only through healing can we reclaim our right to the playfulness we never enjoyed. The memory of daddy, abuser, and lover is the Hades to which we must compulsively return in memory and unreasonable guilt until we can claim our own power to let go and move on to the powerful image of Persephone returned. Okay. Demeter and Zeus, patriarchal incest dyad. I just want to say, like, okay, so I've talked to a fair amount of, well, like Michelle brought up, a lot of women are survivors of father-daughter incest. So I've talked to women about this. Um, Here she keeps talking a lot about the connection with the mother. And honestly, it's not something that I've thought a lot about or talked to survivors a lot about. But if any of you feel comfortable, if you would like to share something about how the experience of incest affected your relationship with your mother, because she's really, really focusing on it. And like a lot of the people I talk to, it's like they never mention that. They just talk about like, obviously how their relationship with their dad was like radically changed by this. And like it's more about like the effect it had like on their entire personhood as a child rather than like the individual relationships. Like I don't know. It's weird. It's really strange to me. Like it's interesting, I guess, but it's a bit strange. Feels kind of out of touch. But again, it's not like I'm a specialist on the issue. All right. Demeter and Zeus, patriarchal incest dyad. In father-daughter incest, the father initiates incest consciously or subconsciously by appropriating his daughter as his quote-unquote special child, his possession. This often occurs when the child is quite young, during the separation-individuation phase of development between the ages of 1 to 3. In some cases, the man's wish for a little girl of his own is acted out by marrying a woman who is so subservient that his quote-unquote ownership of the child is guaranteed even before the child is born. Quote, in many cases, the father is actively keeping the mother from having a relationship with the child. End quote. Michelle says it gets more specific if one or the other parents don't believe. Yeah, I feel like she's being very general and like incest is such a complicated issue that I don't really think you can be general about it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I don't know. Okay, whatever. The father carries an unwhole perception of himself. He sees himself primarily as either all good or all bad, and he needs another person to carry the unwanted half of himself. If he is sadistic, he needs first his wife and later his child/victim to carry the unwanted bad projection of himself and to punish and humiliate for quote-unquote being bad, so that he can continue to feel good. This part I agree with. So far I agree with, like, her conceptualization of, like, the father, rapist father. Okay. More commonly, the father feels bad and needy inside and cannot nurture himself. He therefore needs to pull in another person, at first the wife and later the child, to be the good stabilizer whom he sees as existing to make him feel good. Yeah, I mean, this I totally agree with, like, the ownership aspect of it, and, like, this is my property, so I'm going to do with it what I want. Like, yeah. Not to, like, I'm not trying to excuse anything, this kind of makes sense to me. This projective dynamic is set in motion by father's special inclusion of his daughter on walks and business trips and his clear preference for her over her mother, which sets up competition and division between mother and daughter. I don't know, though. Again, she's generalizing a lot. Like, I've heard radically different things from incest survivors. Either, like, their entire family treated them like shit and they were, like, the whipping kid of the family, right? Like, the whipping boy of the family. Or they were, like, daddy little girl. Like, she's describing that here. I don't think it's useful to be like, this is the incest thing that happens. Elusive is like, this book is on point. Don't worry, Elusive, it's only on point for like 2 paragraphs, then it's going to become bullshit again. Okay. The child is induced through clear, although often quite subtle parental persuasion, to be what her father wants, which confirms the father's illusion that his child really wants him sexually. The mother and the rest of the family begin to relate to this child as if the projected labels really were the child's whole personality. Thus, the child is taught to behave according to her belief that she is only what others tell her she is. In this way, she is prohibited from developing a whole personality. Yeah. I mean, obviously, parents have a lot of power over their kids, like, subconsciously, right? It makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah. This dynamic, initiated by the father but complied with by the mother, is used to devalue the mother and keep the child from being close to her, while it teaches the daughter to quote-unquote be better than or apart from her mother. It splits mother and daughter totally, because the daughter carries the projection of intentionality of the sexualized behavior. None of the family is aware of how this has been set up by the needy but too powerful quote-unquote head of the household. Yeah, Maple, that's a good point. People says I'm not an incest survivor, but I am a CSA survivor, child sexual abuse survivor. I find the whole concept of suggesting that Greco-Roman mythology, which sprang from a culture that viewed sexual violence and pedophilia as natural / positive, vaguely offensive. Yeah, that's a really good point. I didn't even think about that. Um, yeah. Also, hi, Maple. Okay. Um, okay, like, also, like, blanket statement. Like, if you are a survivor of any kind of sexual violence, I'm so sorry. I wish you weren't. I wish you didn't have anything to contribute to this conversation, but, like, here we are. I don't want to be, like, expressing sympathy for, like, 90% of the video, because I think that would be boring for you, and you probably heard that a lot, so I'm not going to say it anymore, but okay. All right. Here we are. The specialness of the father-daughter dyad causes the mother, who already feels disenfranchised by the imbalance of power in this severely patriarchal relationship, to feel like Demeter, that the daughter has been stolen from her. Although Demeter in the myth is a more powerful figure who actively saves her daughter, this mother sees herself as as powerless and ineffective against the seduction. In effect, she surrenders her child to the patriarch. Yeah. Ironically enough, Before this paternal disruption of the mother-daughter bond begins, and the mother's conscious or subconscious surrender is in process, the mother may attach special significance to her daughter and feel a great connectedness to her. She may experience a strong desire to have an ideal relationship with her, much as she might have felt a strong desire to have an ideal relationship with her own mother. She, too, needs her daughter to fill needs of her own, although not usually sexual needs. The incest pattern of intense father-daughter bonding is a betrayal by the father of his wife, and causes her acute shame, rage, helplessness, which may, for the most part, be denied and projected. This mother is trapped by the cultural attitudes that proclaim that man is the head of the household, and that she is not able to step out of this powerless position to understand fully how she has invalidated her power and lost her child. It's weird because, like, when I've talked to incest survivors, when they were like experiencing it when they were a kid, they didn't really know what sex was. They didn't understand, like they didn't have any of like the like social consciousness of people of like, oh, what is sex? Like, you know? So from the mother's perspective is very, very different from the child's perspective. The mother's perspective is like, you know, like especially when it's teenagers, you'll hear the mother say this like explicitly when it's a teenager. Like, why are you like seducing my man or something, right? So the mother's perspective is like, you're giving something that he wants that I can't give him. So she's like she's saying, like projecting and insecure and whatever, and like the powerlessness of like, that's the only thing I'm good for, and now you're doing it, kind of thing. But from the child's perspective, it's obviously radically different, right? And I think it's kind of strange here that she's like assuming the child, based on the tone, she's assuming the child has the same perspective as the adults. But like to me, in like the general social consciousness of sex, there is the concept that men like want or need sex, and so it's like, well, who's going to give it to them, right? I don't think that a kid who's being abused will see it that way, right? Whereas like for mom, that's a basis for like some kind of jealousy and projection, but for the kid, they don't see it that way, so it's not a basis for I just feel like she's making some really stupid assumptions here is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, that's exactly it, guys. Like I said yesterday, I wasn't really sure how we're going to do this, but I thought if we start the discussion at all, even if we disagree with the entire essay, it's like we talked about it, right? So that's good. Okay. The mother then adapts to the loss of her child and the concomitant loss of control by taking the blame or projecting. Because the experience of powerlessness undoubtedly must be exacerbated by events of the mother's own childhood, the mother feels unable to protect her child from the powerful other, her husband. Okay, but also this loss of the child thing, like for the concept of for the phenomenon of the loss of the child to even be relevant, it requires like so many things that she's assuming. One, the mother knows about it. A lot of the time, the mother doesn't seem to know about it. Two, if the mother knows about it, she's not in denial about it. Like I would say like 99% of the time, the mother is in one of these two camps. Either doesn't know about it, or if she does know about it, she's in denial. Like I guess you can argue that like even if she's in denial, it's having an effect on her. But like the loss of the daughter, like the way she's describing it, at least to me, the reader, I don't know what you guys are getting out of it, but for me, she's describing it like, okay, there's like a family, and the dad is like, you know, raping the daughter, and the mom knows about this, and she's just like, okay. And every day she's there watching this, and it's just like, all right. And that is not usually how it is it? At least, again, I'm like, she's made, like, the whole essay is based on such general assumptions that I feel like it's almost, in a lot of ways, very misleading. I don't know, Lita. I think a lot of abusers are very Very resourceful. Yeah, Dragon, it's a good fucking point. Very much agree. Dragon is just being like, she was assaulted by women and men, so how does it make sense that she's a lesbian because she was assaulted by a man? Like, I like reject that entire point in this essay because she keeps referencing it as a choice. I'm like, okay, so then, yeah, you're sexually traumatized by men, so you've made the choice to have sex with the other half of the human race that are not men. What does that have to do with women who are homosexual? It has nothing to do with women who are homosexual, does it? Okay. Okay. To further the tragedy, more Greek bullshit. The mother often adopts by coming to perceive her child as bad, different, or unlovable as a defense against the loss and feelings of powerlessness. By the mechanism of projective identification, which is exemplified in the father's inducement of sexually interpreted behavior in his daughter, the mother's own sense of badness is carried by the child and denied by the mother, and her rage at herself and her husband is tragically and characteristically displaced onto the child. I think that's a very convoluted way of looking at things, but I agree with her conclusion that it's like it all gets taken out on the kid by both parents most of the time. Um, yeah, like one person I know there who was like, I mean, the rape went on until they were in college, honestly, from their dad. And their dad is like if I told you the name of this person, you would be like, oh, I know who that is. And like very charismatic, very friendly, like lots of professional contacts, like very good PR. Like everybody thinks he's like a great guy. To the point where even though this has happened like multiple times, like he rapes his children, he's on like his fourth wife now or something. Again, with like children under the age of 10 in his fucking household. Um, so like a lot of the time you're kind of like, how is it possible that the mother didn't know? But I do think like, I don't know, I can't look into the specific situation to tell you if the mom does or doesn't know. I'm just saying I think it's definitely possible. Is this writer a mother, says Toss Stones. It's not mentioned. If someone wants to look up her name, maybe they can find a Wikipedia page or something to see if she's a mother. I don't think so though. But she calls herself a lesbian incest survivor. So I think this writer is deluded regardless. Yes, unfortunately, Michelle, I'm right there with you. All right. The father is always solely responsible and culpable for his betrayal of his wife through the rupturing of the mother-daughter bond and of his child through the seductive and sexual abuse. The mother victimized by her husband must nevertheless bear the responsibility for the surrender of her child to her husband's dominance. Acknowledgement that the mother's actions and feelings hurt her child gives the incest survivor the opportunity to externalize her feelings of anger and helplessness, as well as shame and loss, at the appropriate object, rather than displacing them all onto the father. For the father, the incest is and should be a lifelong guilt. Psychology around this indicates that, as with the criminal mentality, the incest offender must progress towards feeling guilty and making reparation in his life for his offenses. Likewise, the mother must carry appropriate blame for her true failures, although never for the incest itself. An important part of healing for the incest survivor is to apportion blame in this way to the appropriate parental figure. Survivors' literature supports the idea of placing appropriate blame on appropriate people. The survivor is then left with her own responsibility to work through the feelings and distorted perceptions that hinder her present life as a result of the failures of her parents. Possible person, yes. You'll overlook a lot once you've already categorized someone as a good person who you care about. Yeah. Yes, Maple. Like this, Michelle was bringing this up before. It's like a correlation causation thing. Like I was like, so the author said early on that she mostly treats incest survivors and that 70% of the women she treats are lesbians. And I'm like, okay, first of all, you are a lesbian. So I assume if there's a lesbian incest survivor, that they would rather go to a lesbian therapist. So first of all, your data is skewed, okay? Then this. Here, Maple says, let's not forget, predators target LGBT children or proto-LGBT children because they go for any vulnerable child. Yes, exactly. Maple says foster children, proto-LGBT children, children with single parents, children with disabilities, all bigger targets for predators. Exactly. So yeah, it's like a correlation causation thing. It's like she's making a lot of fucking assumptions here. I need a shirt. I'm kind of cold. One sec. Mama. Mama. You wanna come? Come here. Are you gonna freak out? Or are you gonna come? All right. Okay. Persephone, the incest survivor. Corner says, I really feel sad for people who internalize these concepts and apply them to their own lives. Yeah, that's what makes this pretty sad, is that the author is also an incest survivor. So this is clearly like her cope, and she's like teaching it to other women, which is, sad. Okay. The father's appropriation of his daughter from the tight primary emotional bond with her mother is a pre-incest dynamic. In an object relations development schema, this co-opting usually occurs during the symbiotic and rapprochement periods, which overlap the girl's pre-Oedipal phase. Because of disruption of the mother bond, which precedes the actual incest, there is always damage to the child at early developmental levels, even if the incest occurs much later in the girl's life, for example, in adolescence. For the child, what results is a sense of being unconnected to and stolen from her mother. The feeling of being a motherless child Like Persephone, the daughter has a profound sense of being unwanted, unloved, and unprotected. Because the mother feels powerless, enraged at her husband, and unable to help her daughter for herself, she projects this sense of overwhelming badness at her child. Such verbal labels as quote-unquote selfish, lazy, tramp, different, unpopular, and crazy, coupled with behavioral patterns of emotional distance, favoritism of another child, or physical abuse, communicate to the child that she is bad and unlovable in the most profound way possible. Furthermore, the enactment or threat of enactment of the Oedipal wish to win daddy convinces the child that she is witch-like and evil for hurting mommy this way. Oedipal sexual awarenesses, issues of competition, either too much or too little, and a grandiose sense of power are thereafter much more conscious for the incest survivor than for other women. Yeah, I'm very uncomfortable by her using the words daddy and mommy in this. Like, it's extremely fucking uncomfortable to me. Um, I totally agree. Maple says the help for child sexual abuse survivors is often just as bad as the grooming itself. Yeah, to me, it's like propaganda of like how to become okay with it and like help others become okay with it. But like not okay with it isn't like, oh, I survived, so I'm okay now. More like how to become okay with this like happening. It's very disturbing. Yeah. All right. The negative communication from mother results in a distortion of the healthy primary maternal bond, which instead becomes a negative bond to the mother and has its analog in the negative transference we see from such a person in therapy. In cases where such a negative bond exists, there is often so little of a positive connection to the mother that the child has made early promises to herself never to be like her mother, and indeed, is induced to do so because of her identification as being different from her mother and being quote unquote daddy's girl. For children, with this clear sense of negativity in relation to their mother, the damage to the mother bond is easy to see for both client and therapist. This kind of mother daughter relationship with powerful negative bonds that substitute for positive connections to the mother is what I refer to as the Persephone complex in cases of father daughter incest. For some children, there exists, however, a pseudo positive bond between mother and daughter. Such a child does have a way to connect positively to her mother, and thus feel loved and accepted by her. She must sacrifice herself to her mother's well-being by mothering her mother, either physically, emotionally, or in a co-mothering role in the family, while she also forms a bond with her around their shared suffering. In this way, the child can achieve a conditional, positive mother-daughter bond. Yeah, this specifically seems a bit accurate to me. Um, Corner, fucking astute. Corner says, as if lesbianism is a wound that needs healing. Fucking on point, man. Yes. She becomes the so-called good girl, and when her situation is coupled with father-daughter incest, it involves great denial of reality and misuse of the child for the mother's own needs. As an adult, the child will feel tied to her mother and unable to criticize her, and will struggle to maintain the co-bond of suffering in her present life that she established in her early relationship with her mother. She will deny the rage and loss created when she was not allowed to be herself and was forced into the role that invalidated her individuality. The pseudo-positive link is a defense that protects the survivor from the experience of loss that she has had with her mother. As long as the survivor maintains this kind of link with her mother, she will not think of herself as motherless, The core issue is the Persephone complex. But during the course of therapy, many incest survivors relinquish this defense and uncover the loss of their mother that resulted from the extremely conditional acceptance to which they had to adapt. What is then revealed is the underlying longing for the mother who was lost so long ago and the accompanying feelings appropriate to the real abandonment. The loss of the mother may become much more conscious to the client as she allows herself to perceive and enjoy the nurturing of the therapist as a transference object. I don't know a lot about therapy, but isn't transference with a therapist like a thing to be avoided, especially with trauma victims? You know? Also, I don't know. I almost feel like I'm not paying attention because I don't fucking understand what she's saying half the time. Like, this pseudo-positive bond with the mother, where the child is like the one who's the nurturer for the mother. Is she basically saying that if the mother-daughter bond is not with the mother being the nurturer, then it's like that's not a mother-child bond? Like, I don't understand. I wish you would have explained what the correct or healthy or normal mother-daughter bond was before she was like, yep, these are the fake ones, or like that's why it's gone. But I feel like it's a lot of Bean says Dr. Bean says you don't understand because she's talking a load of shite, Benji. Thank you. Okay. The incest complex. Mother bond damage, father bond substitution. I think we're about halfway through the essay at this point. If we recall for a moment Chodoro's theory on the role of gender in the formation of personality differences in men and women, we can see that boys grow up differently from girls because they experience an earlier end to the pre-Oedipal attachment to their mothers and an earlier resolution of the Oedipal conflict that involves the necessity of identifying with their fathers if they are to avoid quote-unquote castration. In pulling away from their mothers, boys form a father-son bond that encourages the development of masculine identity that has at its basis being quote-unquote unlike women, that is, the mother. At maturation, boys go on to seek another woman to fill in the gaps created by mother's loss. When little girls are stolen from their mothers by the father in psychological/sexual incest, they experience an atypical severance of the pre-Oedipal mother-daughter bond that is needed for a girl's secure development. The father forces the daughter, through the powerful means of his seduction, into a tight father-daughter bond that replaces the mother-daughter relationship. This replacement bond causes the child to develop an identity that has at its root being quote-unquote unlike mother, similar to the boy's psychosexual development. Furthermore, I suggest that the exclusivity of the father-daughter bond, which devalues and minimizes mother, may induce the child to form greater psychological distance from her mother than is experienced by most other girls. Then, like her counterpart, the traditionally heterosexualized male, she can utilize the primary sexual response to women. I kind of agree with this section, actually. Like, that you're being forced to be close with your dad because the dad is, like, in a way, like, replacing the mom with the daughter. So this teaches the daughter to view the mother, like, as an inferior, or to view herself as an inferior from the mother or something, and that she, like, projects this. This kind of makes sense. This paragraph kind of makes sense to me. Well, that's too, like, Maple, I have a lot of issues with this essay. Like, what does she mean by seducing the daughter? Like, I'm not saying that what she's referring to isn't a thing. I just don't know what exactly she means by that. Like, because I know, like, you know, from survivors that I've talked to, both of CSA and just, like, survivors of, like, child porn and shit, there's, like, two types of predators. Most are type A, in my mind, that are like, I want to do this because this feels good. I want to hurt someone, so I'm just going to go do that. and type B, who is like romanticized about it, who is like, oh, I'm in love with them and like we belong together and all this like souls and crap. They're like a much more rare type. And I'm like, I don't know what the fuck she's talking about. It's way too general. I don't know what she's. Well, that's what I mean, like Lita. I'm like, is she using the word seduced or seduction as like kind of like ironic, like from his perspective? That's how he sees it because he's like fucked in the head, as she's pointed out. Like, or is she using that word because she's saying this is like what he would, this is the way he would approach an adult woman, and he is now approaching a child in this way. Like, why is she using that word? I don't know. And so I'm exactly what you're saying. This is how I feel at the moment. Lita says the word seduction should never be seriously used in that context. It is so fucked up. I very, very much agree. And I'm just like, if you're using it for a specific reason, like to communicate something specific, whatever it is, I'm not getting it. Yeah, exactly. So Maple says, you know, she's not an incest survivor, but she's a CSA survivor. She's read a lot about how some fathers force their daughters into the fake lover role, where she might end up convinced that she enjoys the attention in some way. But other fathers just do it out of anger, and the daughter always fully knows it's not consensual. Yeah. Um, yeah, exactly. So, like, again, it's like she's being way too general because those are like, I mean, both of them are like a sexual abuse, but they're like psychologically, I think, quite different, right? Um, and especially when those two differences psychologically, when it comes to like the family bonds, which is what the fucking essay is about, are so radically different that it feels like insane that she hasn't mentioned. Tossstone says corrective rape instigated by one's family is impossible to heal from. Very much agree. At least she said that at the beginning of the essay. It's impossible to like that the trauma inflicted by incest is like, you know, permanent. Okay. The establishment of a rejective father-daughter bond ruptures the pre-Oedipal mother bond and directly affects the incest survivor's early object relations because she is forced to bond with her father to the exclusion of her mother. Because the dynamic occurs so early in the child's development, during the crucial years from birth through the age of 5, the father's seductive interest and bonding interrupts one of the progressive stages in the psychological development of ego and object constancy. This damage to the pre-Oedipal bond and the early introduction of active paternal seduction forces Oedipal. Maybe she's using seduction to mean like general sexual behavior that is not necessarily actually sex. I mean, at least from this phrase, that's how I read it. I'm not quite sure. Still, it's very vague. I don't like that. The damage to the pre-Oedipal bond and the early introduction of active parental seduction forces Oedipal attention to be an early event for this child, regardless of the onset of actual physical incest. The activation of the Oedipal triangle, caused by the father's pitting the child against the mother and granting the child specialness in her relationship with him, brings on a similarity to the development issues that a boy faces. Early loss of the pre-Oedipal mother, strong inducement to bond with the father, strong inclination to identify with the father as the new acceptable mother substitute. Introduction to Oedipal issues earlier in the child's development that have the threat or reality of consummation, and for lesbians, a reversion to the original sexualized attraction to the mother object with eventual displacement onto the suitable lesbian in her life. Dude, what the fuck did I just read? So, first of all, I feel like I don't know much about this whole Oedipal mother-daughter thing and father-daughter thing and all this or mother-daughter, mother-son thing. I've only learned about it from reading the essays in this book. But as far as I understand it, her, like, taking at face value, her assumption that, like, because the daughter has been sexually abused by the dad, the mother's relationship with the daughter is now a mirror of her relationship with the son, makes no fucking sense whatsoever. Okay? First of all, as I always say, why are you assuming male crap onto females? Hannah says suitable lesbian, weird turn of phrase. Yes. Like, I don't know. There's so many things I object to in this. Also, this phrase is just super fucking long. Early loss of the pre-Oedipal mother, strong inducement to bond with the father, strong inclination to identify with the father as the new acceptable mother substitute, introduction of Oedipal issues earlier in the child's development that have the threat or reality of consummation. The threat or reality of consummation? What does that even mean? Oh, like the consummation of the sexual. Okay, I understand. Yes. Okay. For some reason, I thought consummation like consume, like eat something, not like sexual. Okay, yes. And for lesbians, a reversion to the original sexualized attraction to the mother object with eventual displacement onto a suitable lesbian later in life. I don't know, man. Just knowing that this is how this woman is basically describing her own feelings and her own experience is pretty fucking sad. It's very sad, very disturbing. Okay. For the female child in an incestuous situation, the reality of Oedipal interest and its resulting lack of safety in being able to express the normal part of developmental desire for her father does not bring on a fear of castration, since she is already castrated, but rather a fear of body damage and intense ambivalence toward, as well as fear of, the mother and her power. On one hand, the child has been forced by the incestuous loss of her mother to desire and need her father more than most girls do, and on the other hand, the desire for father, because it involves an active sexual element, is equated subconsciously with annihilation by her mother. For lesbians, at least, it seems that this subconscious fear of mother's rage, this open encouragement of the bond with the father, and the underlying strength of the sexualized attraction to and love of the lost mother, all form a powerful inducement to utilize the primary sexualized response to women that is an inherent part of the female experience. This relationship with the mother can protect the child from the damage of primary psychological loss of mother, as Kohut has proposed in his analysis of the self, because it often stabilizes the child and offers her a positive experience in many ways. Incest survivors, for example, often have been encouraged to develop their talents or excel in life, but such success sets her up for an ironic and tragic betrayal experience of having a greater parental connection and sense of being important to the same one who sooner or later sexually abuses her. That's something else. Like, okay, obviously, I've said many times, this whole yeah, Michelle, this is what I'm about to say. Michelle is like, all of her conclusions are bullshit because they're based on stuff that has been proven to be bullshit. I mean, as I keep saying, we need to keep in mind this was published in 1987. But this continued talk about the loss of the bond between the mother, like, she just takes it as a given that it's a thing and doesn't explain, like, I don't know, it feels so fucking vague to me. Also, another thing, and it's like, again, I'm not like a specialist on the topic or anything. Dr. M wrote about what, Dr. Bean? Yeah. Another thing that she is assuming a lot. Oh yeah, she keeps referencing that the father basically is like psychologically priming the daughter from the ages of 1 to 3. That's when it begins. This him psychologically priming the daughter for sexual abuse. Again, this is like super fucking general. Like, I think there are a lot of men who start sexually abusing their daughters when they're like tweens or teens, like post-pubertal, and it's like that is a factor in why it happened, right? Like, I don't think there's a bunch of girls who are sexually abused by their dads. It didn't occur to them when they were little that this is a thing to be done, right? Then, and on the other hand, I know girls who were sexually abused by their fathers before the age of 1. So it's like, I fucking hate her assumptions everywhere. All these assumptions, like the whole essay is bullshit because it's built on all these ridiculous assumptions. It's like a very like oversimplistic black and white way of looking at things. Hannah, I'm very uncomfortable with her equating lesbian sexuality with male sexuality. I very, very much agree. Oh, the family sex show. Yeah, that's from Norway or Sweden or something, right? Or is there another show like that? Michelle says that's because if she was specific, she could see that her theory doesn't work. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna try to just like power through and do less analyses. You all know I find it mostly bullshit. Let's keep going. Because how many more pages do you have left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 10 pages left. Paternal appropriation of the child is covert and shields her from primary maternal loss, but the actual sexual interaction is a second and concrete blow to the child's ego, which most often becomes the focus of the recognized narcissistic injury occurring after the first and most crucial wound in the loss of the mother. The loss of the mother, because it is earlier, is hard to pinpoint in specific ways for the client until she allows it to emerge in her consciousness, more like until you project it onto her, lady. But the loss of the father leaves the child with a very conscious sense of futility and betrayal, shame and incontrovertible badness, powerlessness, and rage. No, I know, Michelle. I'm in the same place. I'm in the same place with this essay. Like, I find the whole thing stupid, but it's like I started it, so I have to finish it. That's where I'm at with the essay right now. Okay, thanks, Dr. Bean. I love the Dr. M stuff. Her stuff is amazing. The concrete damage of sexual contact with the father will sometimes be denied because it is the last support and defense against real psychological abandonment. Depending on the age at which the actual incest begins, it creates a second level of developmental damage to the incest survivor, which overlies the loss of the mother bond attachment. Depending on the circumstances, the actual incest activity versus the preliminary seductive attention may overlap with the pre-Oedipal phase or may occur later in latency or pubescence. If the incest activity occurs later in the child's life, she has some years of quote-unquote precarious stability because of the bond with her father, on which to build ego strength, which gives her a good amount of capabilities in therapeutic struggle. It is important for the therapist not to underestimate the strength of these clients, because that has been a major mistake of many traditional psychologists, because at the same time maintaining absolute respect for the feelings of fragility such orphan abuse creates for the victim. The loss of the mother is, in itself, a devastating narcissistic wound to the girl. one that humiliates her in the most profound sense because her whole being is seen as unliked and unloved by her mother. This humiliating sense of maternal rejection and the concomitant need and longing to connect with her mother is coupled with a defensive effort to control the pain and rage that result. The pain and the defense against it provide the core disorder in incest survivors and is what I refer to as mother bond damage, the matrix of the Persephone complex. Dude, you literally said like a page ago. Why do you have to keep repeating that? Okay. Like, we get it, that this essay is you explaining to us what is the Persephone complex. You don't need to keep mentioning it over and over again. The sense of projection by the mother may also be so early because of the earliness of the father's intrusive disruption of the mother bond that the client may be aware only of her rejection of mother as a worthy object to identify with, and she may be more conscious of having never wanted to be like her mother. She may enter therapy quote-unquote hating women and identifying primarily with men, which is quite a challenge to the female therapist, whose best response is empathizing with the pain beneath the defense. These hateful negative bonds with the survivor's mother must be worked through in therapy, but they give a survivor a powerful advantage of being more severed from her mother than many women, and she is, therefore, often freer to make creative choices to shape her life. An empowering perspective most male or male-identified therapists miss, because traditional male definitions of females do not include the true female empowerment. She often has so much determination to heal and make a better life for herself that her chances of improvement are particularly strong despite the damage to her personality. I don't know, like, another conclusion here, I mean, like, there's a billion things wrong with this essay, but another thing here is she's assuming that if the daughter cannot empathize or sympathize with the mother or doesn't have a positive bond with the mother, then the daughter is also incapable of empathizing or sympathizing with other women. And I'm like, I don't think that's true at all. Like, it's a very ridiculous assumption to make. Okay. Okay, I think I'm just gonna go. This section I think is gonna be about like how lesbianism is a choice. Prepare yourself. Lesbian preference. Persephone resurrected. Like, on one hand, I kind of get what she's saying with like the Persephone resurrected as like a symbol of empowerment. Because to me, like, I keep going back to Marilyn Fry, which is like power starts at being able to say no. That's where it begins, being able to say no. So in a way, this whole like choosing to be a lesbian after an assault, it's like choosing to say no to men. And like, okay, I get it. Saying no to men is like an important autonomy, a step towards autonomy for women and whatever. But, you don't need to say yes to women in order to say no to men. Okay, let's move on. Lesbian preference, Persephone resurrected. It is this very separateness that gives an incest survivor the empowerment to heal, and to heal with a richness and diversity that allows her the flexibility to look beyond cultural restrictions in the life solutions she creates. For this reason, lesbian life choices may be more viable to an incest survivor because the survivor's freedom leads her more easily to the choice of a woman who can provide the best and most fulfilling relationship for her. In our culture, the most empowered woman is the woman who does not need to please men. In this sense, the lesbian incest survivor truly embodies the figure of Persephone, the mysterious and powerful. In my work with lesbians who have suffered father-daughter incest, I have isolated and observed 5 core issues that occur with significant frequency in almost all of my clients. That is, that every lesbian incest survivor I have worked with is conscious of at least 3 of the 5 issues presented here. Repeatedly seeing this in my work has prompted me to suggest that there is a significant correlation between these factors and lesbian preference. Okay, so we're getting to the meat of it now, why she has her ridiculous beliefs. The core issues that I see in the overwhelming majority of incested lesbians are identification with the father, protectiveness towards the mother, rejection of the mother, intense longing for the mother, and feelings of abandonment by the lost mother. I think I actually agree with most of those, but I don't think that means that this is like proof of this Persephone complex. I think that's just like what happens to you when you experience incest. It seems that a turning away from identification with the mother and a preference for identifying with the father is sometimes an important factor in the formation of lesbian sexual identity. Despite the sexual abuse, it frequently occurs that the relationship with the father was the most available to the child. As a result, the child is inclined to value the power of masculinity, i.e., father, as the healthier model of adaptation. In a culture that reinforces androcentric values and then denies them to women, this personal choice becomes a healthy alternative to traditional passive female identity. Okay, no. This is like hugely inconsistent with the rest of the essay. Because when she's talking about like the Oedipal bond and like the mother-daughter bond and blah 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 blah, she is talking about everything happening on like a subconscious level to the child. Like the child is going through these processes of development, right? If I'm taking her at her word and all of this is happening on like a subconscious level because of like the subtle cues from the dad or whatever the fuck, then how is it she's acting like this woman, like lesbians consciously will like sit down and be like, you know what, I want to identify with manhood. Like it's like a conscious decision they make. How can it be both subconscious and a conscious decision at the same fucking time? So fucking vague. This essay is horrifically postmodern. I fucking hate it. Okay. This variable has been presented in about 80% of the cases I have seen. On the other hand, lesbians who seem more identified with their mothers, or sometimes a grandmother, describe their fathers as having practically no redeeming qualities to idealize. I believe that in these cases, the father identification is submerged in the bad father/good mother splitting that was necessary as a result of this. As repair of the splitting progresses, the lesbian client's perceptions more clearly align with this model. This is some subconsciously unconscious bullshit. Yeah, I totally agree. Bean Sprout, I think what she's trying to say is that they associate what happened to them and what can happen to their mother also with like the powerlessness of femaleness. So I don't think I don't think she's talking about like wanting to actually be a man, but I think she means like on a psychological level, they think that if they internalize like masculine behaviors and masculine attitudes, that they are like psychologically protected from being re-victimized or from being victimized in the same way as their mother might be, or something like that. But it's like very vague and postmodern. Okay. Okay. In virtually all of the incested lesbians I have seen, there have been a strong sense of having been the mother's protector, although many report having been frustrated in that role. It may be that the wish to protect mother is one of the few positive ways the child can relate to her, especially in the pseudo-positive bonding, and this becomes exaggerated beyond the norm. But even in the negative situations, the incest is usually seen as protecting the mother from loss of the father, that is, quote unquote, keeping the family together. In many incested lesbians, about 80 to 90%, I have noticed a strong conscious rejection of the mother and her model of femininity, along with negative bonds as they are played out in the negative resistance patterns in therapy. As the child comes to accept feelings of badness, negative bonds, such as the distance mentioned earlier, become a substitute for a positive relationship with the mother. Working through the negative bonds is a necessary separation process for the client. For the majority of lesbians I have worked with, there has been a conscious awareness of internalized longing for the mother, which is manifested through sexual desires for women and conscious wishes for the nurturing and holding of which they have never received enough. In a small percentage of these cases, approximately 5%, clients who were closer to the subconscious processes indicated they felt some subtle seduction on the part of their mothers. Again, what the fuck does she mean when she uses the word seduction? I don't know what she's talking about. It is uncertain if this was actually mother-initiated interaction or if the feelings of sexuality were not more of a projection on the client's own sexual pre-Oedipal feelings of the mother. Or how about because she was sexualized by the father, she's now exhibiting the sexualized behavior? Doesn't that seem the most fucking obvious answer? Alright. It is possible that feelings of seduction in the mother-daughter interaction, except for physical maternal incest, may have more to do with sexualization of closeness and tenderness by the child, who has been conditioned to make this association by the incest, and who has been deprived of nurturing in the mother-child relationship. It is also possible that these clients' experiences were denied feelings of homosexuality in the mother that were projected onto the client. Thanks. I'm definitely an armchair psychologist. Many of the clients I have seen have a conscious awareness of feelings of abandonment, emotional and sometimes physical, by the mother. More subtle feelings of abandonment occur when the child has experienced conditional acceptance by the mother for caretaking and co-suffering roles. Conscious feelings of abandonment occur in roughly 50 to 60% of the clients I have treated. Such abandonment was a real factor in the lives of these clients. Hence, the repair work involves real mourning for what never was and what never can be replaced, with additional positive bonding to the mother, substitute/therapist, whom the client can more adequately internalize. What the fuck? You want the therapist, you want your client to bond with you as a substitute for their mother? How about when the therapy finishes because you've accomplished whatever your goal is and you're passing them off to another therapist or they're going on their merry way? What the fuck? How, like, the, yes, Maple says I think this is the worst so far. What the fuck is going on? Honestly, I'm at this point, I'm very, very questioning what the fuck was the editorial process to get an essay put in this book? Like, considering some of the other essays in this book, which are so good, I'm like, they must have read this and been like, oh wow, this knocks my socks off, this is great. How did they read this essay? Which to me, honestly, is like, I understand this is like a complicated topic with like, it requires nuance and blah, blah, blah. No, I didn't end up reading that thing on women in war, bean sprout. I got too upset. I didn't want to do it. I thought it would be like too visceral. But it seems to me like the ethics of this therapist are very questionable. And I don't think it's because she's bad intentioned. I think she's like traumatized, like one of you were saying. She has a lot of trauma to process. I think it was Michelle. Um, yeah, toss stones. She doesn't talk about fucking anything. Like, I also toss stones. I don't think it's like she's hating on moms, but I think her assumptions are all based on bullshit, so it seems like stupid. I don't understand why she's focusing so much on the mother. Like, I understand, a lot of these lesbian psychologists or whatever seem to think that there's like the mother-daughter bond is super important for like a lesbian's rest of her life development and interrelationships and blah blah blah. Okay, fine, sure, whatever. But honestly, to me, this essay barely has anything to do with the Persephone herself, like with the daughter, the survivor. It's very strange. Um, yeah, Dr. Bean. I was talking about this I think yesterday or 2 days ago. Um, Dr. Bean says I got into an argument with a man on Twitter a few weeks ago because he was saying that he, as a CSA survivor, was not traumatized and that it isn't always harmful, like WTF. Yeah. Um, like a lot of the people who, like my contemporaries from when I was groomed, I've tried to kind of like mention it or bring it up to them, like very carefully. Like you have to say it really the right way. And they're all like, "Oh yeah, I never experienced grooming. Like I never was traumatized. Like everything's good. Like I was just like sexually, like precocious or whatever." And I'm like, "No, dude, you were like traumatized way more than I was. And because you're like a kinkster now, you just think it's a good thing, but actually no." Um People says I've read that children who perceive their abuse as quote unquote consensual have even more damage than those who view it as an attack. Yeah. Okay. The Persephone complex. Treatment objectives. Also, why did like half the subtitles start with the term the Persephone complex? That's already the title of the fucking essay. You don't need to have it in subtitles too. Okay. Treatment objectives. In clinical work with incested clients. Also, I've never heard the term incested before. I'm like a bibliophile. Whatever. I really like words. I really, really like words. This word I do not like. I do not need to know the variations of ways in which the word incest can be used. I do not like it. Um, no, I don't like it. Okay. These issues of mistrust and isolation, fear of closeness, ambivalence over mother, control and humiliation, and sexual intimacy are areas in which the therapist hopes to provide a corrective emotional experience and assistance in healing. The primary issues for any incest survivor is lack of trust. Her mental and physical boundaries were violated, not just from the sexual assaults, but also from earlier childhood experiences that taught her that the world was not safe. Because of the father's psychological appropriation of his daughter for himself, the development of maternal object relatedness for the young child is disturbed and replaced by the incestuous father bond. Before the onset of incest, the father served as a secondary maternal figure, and his betrayal of this role by initiating sexuality in the relationship, combined with the preceding loss or betrayal by the mother, is the final event that convinces the child that she cannot trust anyone to care sincerely about her. This inability to feel safe with others, either intimately or in the world, creates a profound sense of emotional isolation, even if she has adaptively learned to be quote unquote queen of the prom. The internal loneliness of incest survivors is the most painful aspect of her life, and the one which, when brought out and talked about in therapy, gives her a powerful motivation to change. Okay, Apostle Person, your job now is to be the Dr. Seuss of my... the Dr. Seuss of the live chat. I approve of this. I do not like it in a book. I do not like Freudian look. I do not like discussing my dad. I do not like it when grandparents are bad. Finally, the comic relief has arrived, guys. Wow, I'm more tired than I thought. I can't fucking speak properly. Okay. Because of the inability to trust someone else or to let someone be important to her, a survivor frequently uses defensive detachment, numbing out, or dissociation, suicidal ideation, self-mutilation, and false self-identity as adaptations that preserve for her the greatest autonomy and dignity in the face of massive abandonment and misuse. Such defenses also cover the underlying feeling of impotent rage at both father and mother, and ironically, it takes trust to express rage. Mother bond damage, with or without the Persephone complex, is the primary damage in incest. Okay there, lady. I mean, I guess if you're a psychologist... No, but still, I mean, I don't that's the bullshit. Okay, whatever. The whole essay is bullshit. Through the healing effects of the transference, the therapist must... Is transference always a healing thing? I thought it can be quite fucking damaging. The therapist must establish repair of the mother-daughter bond damage as the integral part of her therapy. In the transference, a client will often detach from the therapist or others when she feels threatened by closeness. She will mutilate or hurt herself to protect herself and the quote-unquote mother/therapist from her rage and bring her out of numbness and present herself in a way that will attempt to please or provoke the therapist as transference object and will hide her true self. Learning to express feelings in words is a form of mastery and control the client must learn. An incest survivor is afraid to talk about her rage, her envy of others, her powerful manipulations to control the significant people in her life, including the therapist, her angry alienation from even those who genuinely care about her, and her tendency to sexualize relationships, which frightens her because she feels dirty and like her father when this happens. Again, so many fucking assumptions. There's like, this is some incest survivors sexualize a lot of people. Some are basically asexual after. Like, Beansprout, you want to link it to us in the live chat? When the therapist can provide a corrective experience involving acceptance of the hated aspect of the self, the client will be able to separate from this powerful negative bond/relationship with her mother. To do this, the therapist must first adequately work through the same feelings of rage, jealousy, powerlessness, sexualizing, and alienation in herself, so that she can accept them in her client. Because of the lack of trust, the incest client has a handicapping fear of closeness. In her life and in transference, she protects herself from feelings of rage, abandonment, and humiliation by acting out her perceptions about intimacy and loving as they relate to her childhood predicament. Particularly disturbing for most incest survivors is the fear that closeness with someone will result in sexual interaction, either intrusion from others or by the self. Closeness and sexuality were never differentiated in the incest survivor's home, and this association in adult life causes the survivor to defend against closeness constantly or to sexualize closeness constantly in an effort to deal with this threatening feeling of extreme danger. It is of utmost importance that the therapist talk about closeness, including its learned association with sexuality, as normal for incest survivors, and to find a way to tell the client that she is only wanting to be close when this happens. The therapist must never become part of the seductive projection, because this would confirm for the client her distorted belief that all intimacy must be obtained by sex, barter, rather than the real qualities she possesses. Okay, but also, some. Hey, Kaz, don't worry, you've missed a horrible essay. Again, this is like a huge fucking assumption. There are incest survivors who react in a sexual way to other people for many reasons. Not because, like, she's saying the only reason that an incest survivor would like interpret or feel sexual towards someone else is because they want like closer emotional intimacy. I've talked to incest survivors who feel sexual towards someone else because they feel threatened and they think the way to appease someone is to give them what they want sexually because they feel like for many fucking reasons that have nothing to do with intimacy. So like again, just like so many fucking stupid assumptions. Okay, I'm gonna try to stop like stopping every 5 times it on every page. We'll see. Okay. Maple says, like in quotes, I experienced this, therefore all incest survivors react the same way. Yeah, it's very nuts. Particularly for a lesbian incest survivor, therapy must involve working through the strong ambivalence about her mother. Because of the child's feelings of rejection by her mother, she must deal with a wish to reject, punish, and humiliate the mother, whom she also needed and loved. This core conflict is reflected in the transference and also in love relationships of the client, which will sabotage her adult life. She feels extremely needy on one hand and humiliated by what she sees as her quote-unquote weakness with lovers, mother on the other. Okay. I think it's one thing to be like there are certain aspects of your relationship with your mother that you might be like trying to emulate, or like there are certain characteristics that your mother had that you like associate with like positive things that you might like be attracted towards. But to be like she literally is like your mother, like your lover is like a stand-in for your literal actual fucking mother. Like she says, she makes it so literally. It's really hard to take her seriously. At the same time, she is intensely enraged by the humiliation of neediness in the face of inadequate response, and she subconsciously wants never to feel another woman again. For many therapists, there is a fear that extreme neediness in a client will become a demand for help so great that they will feel smothered and drained. This countertransference reaction to neediness must be carefully controlled because the therapist must provide a corrective experience for the client who has often been given the message from the mother, quote, "You need too much and you are disgusting," end quote. To provide a corrective experience for the incest survivor, therefore, therapists must handle their own aversions to neediness in themselves and others by strengthening their boundaries around giving in the face of intense transferential neediness. They must learn eventually to validate their rights to give what they can, but not to give beyond their limits. No, this is a different Freud fangirl, Kaz. Honestly, I wouldn't say she's so much of a Freud fangirl as like a mythology narrative fangirl. But the Freud stuff is pretty fucking potent. Issues around control are also central to the incest survivor's psychology. Perfectionism, various forms of food control, obesity, anorexia, bulimia, money issues, and excessive striving for success or achievement are defenses against the humiliation of not having had control over parents who she once needed and by whom she was hurt. The incest survivor also has a need to control closeness in order to protect herself and others from the surfacing of sexual feelings that are strongly associated with closeness. Rather than fear of fusion, control may indicate fear of badness, sexuality, in the incest survivor, who wants very much to be quote-unquote good and has little structure in which to conceptualize goodness. Lack of trust and need to control closeness lead the survivor to an emotional isolation that is reinforced by her feelings that she should have controlled the incest and sometimes the pleasure associated with the incest. She feels guilty for not having done so, and that what happened to her was so bad that she is apart from the rest of humankind. She feels alien to other people, and that the normal world, with joy and sufficiency in life for others, does not belong to her. Okay, I have to go to the washroom. I'll be right back. Okay, 3.5 more pages. Honestly, it's like a stimming thing that I scratch my head a lot. It's like an ADHD thing. I have like some of those like little toys for like stimming, but like ever since I was a little kid, I just scratch my head a fuck ton. Um, yeah. Uh, 3.5 more pages, guys. Oh my god, I thought we were gonna be done by 2 hours. Like, fuck, this is torture, man. Okay. Without control and around issues of closeness, the client believes she will be humiliated. A client's reaction to humiliation is defense and rage. Eventually, the rage must be re-experienced and worked through. For lesbian clients, the rage at mother is usually more defended against than it is for heterosexual clients, because lesbians consider themselves women-centered and efforts to be politically correct may hinder free expressions of anger at mother. True enough, honestly. The therapist must enlighten and encourage her lesbian client about not carrying all the anger inside herself, and to let the anger at both parents exist, because she was hurt by both parents. All of the preceding issues play into the fear of sexuality, which is very common after incest for lesbians and heterosexual women alike. For an incest survivor, sex is never just sex, and it is rare to experience pleasure, good feelings, and the vulnerability of orgasm. Instead, sex becomes the focus of difficulties with trust and a struggle to believe that letting someone else be close will not result in humiliation, degradation, betrayal, and rejection, as well as recapitulation of the original feelings of powerlessness and badness. In an effort not to repeat the trauma around mother's lack of connection and father's sexual abuse, the survivor uses sex to control against feelings of badness and powerlessness that are intensified in sex for her. She may, at times, try to overcome these fears by being extremely withdrawn, and at other times will try to give in to the quote-unquote whorish feeling by letting herself go. Both behaviors are attempts to cope with the double message that she was given about sexuality. In reaction to fear of sexuality, lesbian incest survivors experience a variety of symptoms ranging from physical numbness, lack of clitoral sensation, a sense of unreality, spaciness, dissociation from their bodies, and unwanted thoughts that distract them from their sexual experience. There is also the phenomenon that Meiselman refers to as quote-unquote specificity, or the client's belief, confirmed by some of her experiences, that if only she could be touched in quote-unquote the right spot or quote-unquote the right circumstances, she could be orgasmic. This projection of inadequacy onto the lover protects the incest survivor from the underlying sexual issues and controls the amount of sexual intimacy she experiences. It also allows the survivor to put bad feelings associated with sex and incest onto the lover while protecting her own self-esteem. Hey Rachel, I can't believe you went to work and came back and we're still here. We only have 2 pages left, Rachel, but it's gotten pretty bad. It's much worse. And I've given up on just reading and then doing an analysis. It's all one bullshit now. All right. The incested woman was invariably told that she must be good or non-sexual, while she was constantly reinforced for behaving badly or sexually. This kind of double bind was impossible to cope with, so the child developed patterns of behavior to manage the situation in which she was replaced and that she finds recreated in her adult sexual relationships. Asexuality, hypersexuality, and conditional sexuality, which may be experienced separately or alternately by the same individual at different times. Much of this sexual difficulty comes with the strong associations of badness with incest induced around enjoying pleasures, even if only the pleasure of attention. The associations often make the incest survivor overvigilant against unwilled sexual response in herself. She is paranoid about seeing a sexual response to herself in others, and because of the overvigilance, frequently notices this and feels as though she has done something bad to elicit this or to withdraw consequently. The opposite reaction, with over-sexual responses to stimulus, is an adaptation to the original trauma, which involves feeling helpless against the overwhelming parent and reflects the child's original choice to go with the overriding parental will rather than to fight it. Underneath, she often feels as if her behavior. No, okay. I'm trying to not comment anymore and just get to the end, but is she, because this is her talking about the present day adult survivor, right? I don't think that when the present day adult survivor is doing something, it's because she consciously is like, oh yeah, I need to please my parent. I think at that point, by the time they're an adult, it's like behavioral and like the context. Um, oh, whatever. Like, I mean, obviously, okay, whatever. Let's keep going. Underneath, she often feels as if her behavior is offensive and intrusive to herself and others. This is an exaggeration of her sexual power and a part of the incest projection that she is so sexually powerful. It is also an inability to accommodate the reality of present adult sexual variables and a defense against the disorganizing impact of the childhood sexual trauma on the developing ego. Because of the early sexualized attention of the father and the intrusive sexual action later on, the child develops a schema that is consolidated and stabilized by the constant environmental influence of a sexually overstimulating family relationship. The representation of sex, because of this environmental influence, becomes generalized into concepts of closeness, caring, attention, intrusion, lack of control, humiliation, and badness. The therapist may help the client differentiate sex from these various other feelings so that the whole general schema of sexual overstimulation will not be triggered by a look or gesture that the client interprets as sexual and responds to in her conditioned way. This separation of sex from the whole conditioned response is also one of the most difficult aspects of the therapeutic work, both because of the power of the sexual bond and because of the embarrassment attached to talking about sex for both client and therapist. Or how about for like many, many years of conditioning? Okay. It is important that the therapist not respond sexually to such a client. What in the fuck? What in the fuck? How is it even worth saying this? If any therapist ever feels that they might be okay with responding sexually to a client, please quit your job and get the fuck away from therapy. Jesus Christ. I cannot believe this woman. Okay. It is important that the therapist not respond sexually to such a client because the client will interpret this as a recreation of her old power/omnipotence over daddy. Why are you using that word? As an indication of her badness or witchiness in inducing sexual responses in someone, daddy, or as a symbol of her specialness with the therapist. Such interpretations can initiate a negative, grandiose reaction that hinders the development of true therapeutic intimacy. Yeah, we have one page left. Yes, Rachel, it's very painful. I can't wait till we're done. Everyone is like, this is definitely the worst essay in the book, for sure. Remember when, like, yesterday I was like, maybe I shouldn't read this essay? And then I was like, I skimmed it. I think it's kind of okay. I didn't skim the end of it. It gets, like, the last 4 pages are definitely the worst in the whole essay. Okay. Because of these core issues, it is best that the therapist restrain all physical contact with this type of client. When is a therapist supposed to have physical contact with a client? Presumably under very specific necessary circumstances, no? Like, I'm not a therapist. I don't never talk about this with anyone, but presumably a therapist is not starting each session by hugging the client or something. Yeah, Maple says I'm at least glad we can learn by roasting the shit out of this garbage essay. Yeah. Like, that's kind of what I was saying yesterday. I was like, even if the whole essay is shit and we disagree with it, at least we can be talking about this topic together. Okay. Because it is very late in the therapeutic healing before the client can differentiate between safe closeness and sexual intrusiveness. This issue is so central to the psychology of incest that the therapist is most ethical if she regards the client as one whose sense of safety depends on clear non-sexual messages and boundaries, and makes a policy of only giving the physical affection within ethical limits that the client requests. How about no physical affection with any of your clients ever? Like, if so, I've known some incest survivors who are like categorically incapable of saying no to sex. like whenever it's brought up. Like they are literally physically, like it triggers like a fight or flight response in them whenever anything sexual comes up. And as a result, they have had lots of sex with lots of people they didn't want to have sex with in situations that was like, very bad. They were incapable of saying no. If you are a therapist who works with incest survivors, it should be so fucking obvious that this is a huge issue that you should never, ever, ever initiate any physical contact or reciprocate any physical contact ever. All right. Learning to trust with a therapist is like learning to love with a safe family. Is it though? Shouldn't there be like much more healthy boundaries? Okay. It lays the groundwork for a client who can then learn to trust in a sexual way with an appropriate partner after she has internalized that it is safe to come out of her bed, be real, and exist in her body again. Perhaps the most central issue and the highest achievement a client can accomplish as a result of therapy is the kind of sexual trust and intimacy that involves awareness, sensitivity, openness, and a whole relationship between herself and another. In this way, a full experience of trust, including eventual sexual trust, can open the door for a joy, a playfulness, and a richness of living that has been denied this woman all her life. Conclusion. Guess what else is in the subtitle? Persephone again. Conclusion, the power of Persephone. Because if she doesn't mention it once a page, the essay is obviously not about that topic. All right. I have attempted to reinterpret developmental dynamics for lesbian survivors of father-daughter incest. I have presented a theory drawn from the work of Freud, Chodorow, Slip, and Kohut that suggests that incested lesbians, because of their seductive parental bond, develop an intense father bond to replace the ruptured maternal liaison that occurs in incest dynamics. Also, her ability to complete a phrase is very questionable. How is she a lecturer at a university? Very questionable. You should know how to write a fucking phrase, lady. This father-daughter bond stimulates the reversion of a girl's sexual energy to the first love, the mother object, which the girl recreates in lesbianism as an adult. Yes, Rachel, for sure. Rachel says, as a lesbian and an incest survivor, I think this is a very hard subject to dissect without alienating one woman's experience. That being said, a lot of this is tired rhetoric and reads as projection. No, literally. So, Rachel, I don't know if you were here, but she literally says that she is a lesbian incest survivor. And, yeah, the whole fucking thing. Honestly, I think I'm not going to do this because this essay is so painful. I almost think it's worth it to like start from the beginning and be like an analysis of the author based on her projection of her issues. Because like that's what the whole fucking essay is. Yeah. It's unfortunate. The primary wound of incest is the loss of the mother. Wait. No, yeah, we didn't read this yet. Okay. The primary wound of incest is the loss of the mother bond, which is damaged severely by the father's sexual appropriation and misuse of the child. But in lesbians, this loss of the mother gives the girl the advantage of more separateness from her mother, which allows her a measure of personal power and creative flexibility in choosing more freely the appropriate personal relationship that best meets her needs. I have brought out the original dynamic between mother and daughter as a specifically sexual bond, one that Freud referred to quite clearly. Freud's theory of innate bisexuality of all women underscores the fact that, for women at least, the first sexual bond is for the same sex, not the opposite sex. This fundamentally homosexual model is an innate part of the psychology of women and the most important aspect of lesbian adaptation after father-daughter incest. Because of a woman's psychology, it may be that we need to rethink lesbian adaptation after father-daughter incest, not as judgment to the pathology, but as healthy reversion to the original matrosexual model that is a normal part of female psychology and a normal dynamic in the psychological development of males. Okay, but no, it's not. Like, yeah, Maple, that's what I mean. Like, some of them refer to it as kind of like the first like physical sensations you have are like from your mother and stuff, and so you have like a kind of like sensory bond with her. She refers to it literally, like you literally are physically sexually attracted to your mother. Also, what was I thinking here? Oh yeah, also, okay, it's very horrible. Yeah, Kaz, I also didn't know that he was the one who came up with the innate bisexuality thing, but it makes so much sense, doesn't it? Um, hey Star002, welcome to the channel. Mabel, this is pro-pedo propaganda, agreed. What was I going to say? Oh, also, she's like, yeah, we need to revert to like the natural, healthy sexual or healthy, what is it? Reversion to the original matrosexual model that is a normal part of female psychology. But no, it's not, because you literally say that like phase of the pre-Oedipal phase or whatever it is, that it ends by the age of 3. So how is it that for an adult, it would be a healthy thing for her to go back to this stage? Like, I just mean the internal consistency of the essay doesn't make any sense. Like, if she is saying, oh, it's a healthy thing for like kids to go through this stage, or like this is a part of their development, and then she's like, you know what, if you're fucked up as an adult, you should return to the sexual stage you were at when you were 3 years old. Also, again, I don't know a lot about this topic specifically, but what the fuck is Freud and all of these people talking about when they say sexual attraction as a child? Because like, first of all, how do you even detect sexual arousal in like babies, girls? And if you do detect it, it's probably a response to like physical stimulation, like being held or something, not like an actual like sex thing, right? So does that actually does that mean anything? Does that have a long-term effect if it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't fucking know what the fuck they're actually saying. Da meter. Thanks, Rachel. Oh, Beansprout, you missed it. The matrilineal, it's like this whole thing about how the first physical bond you have is with your mother, so your first attraction is to your mother, and so you have like your sense of identity comes from like your sameness with your mother, and like, I don't know, it's like a whole thing. We've talked about it in several of the essays now, and I kind of feel like it's bullshit. On some level, when it comes to like the formation of identity, it makes sense to me, like to like how am I similar, how am I different from a young age, right? But the rest of it seems like super bullshit. Yes, Beansprout, exactly. It is some real bullshit. Okay, we're on the last fucking paragraph, guys. The last fucking paragraph. Are you ready? I'm very ready to be done with this stupid essay. In the myth, Persephone is condemned to return to Hades and her abuser each year. Exactly. Which is, how is she the proof of the powerful survivor, escapee, whatever, if she is like condemned to return to her abuse constantly? Okay. Like every aspect of this like mythological analogy makes no fucking sense. Like every aspect of it. And like someone was saying before, that's why there's like no specific examples of anything in the essay, because if she tried to give specific examples based on her analyses, they wouldn't make any fucking sense because the analysis is bullshit. In the myth, Persephone is condemned to return to Hades and her abuser each year, bringing winter to Earth. Incest has hidden beneath the ice of denial for all of history, it seems. Okay, that is a super fucking... No, Rachel. We're defining Persephone by her powerful survivor narrative. That's what the author said many times on the first page. Therefore, that is the case, obviously, and nothing else can be, like, taken from this very stupid archetype. Okay. But Persephone returns as a powerful figure in the myth. And is she powerful if she can't fucking say no to going back to be re-victimized? I don't fucking think so. And it is in breaking the pattern of denial, the secrets of the client was told never to tell, that we begin to see Persephone emerge victorious. By understanding incest, the client and the therapist can begin to nurture the unfolding of Persephone, this woman with an abundance of strength, power, anger, and healing, love and creativity, to share with the world that she gradually comes to understand is for her too. Okay, this essay fucking sucked, man. This was a horrible essay. I hated this essay. The next essay is on lesbian alcoholism. Hopefully they can be grounded and not postmodern about that at least. Like fuck. When's the alcoholism one? I think Monday. You go look at my channel. It's scheduled. All right. Falso person. Can't wait to hear how Freud compares drinking out of a bottle to fellatio. Gonna be great. I mean, let's pray to God or the goddess or whatever, Gaia, that there is no Freud in the alcoholism essay. It definitely seems unnecessary. Definitely would be a forced inclusion. I do not want to hear anything else about Freud. Let's actually see. I think there's only 5 essays left in the book. So, we have the alcoholism essay. Yeah. Then we have lesbians, weight and eating, new analysis and perspective. So it's like, body image, self-image, eating disorders stuff. Why did it suddenly get brighter in here? Nothing changed. Oh no, I had to turn on my screen. Oh my god, it's my computer screen that's been overbright. Okay, then, so that's it for therapies. There's the alcoholism one and the weight and eating one. Then we have community, 3 essays left in community. Community, the first essay is called The Saga of Continuing Clash in Lesbian Community, or Will an Army of Ex-Lovers Fail? So I think it's about based on the title, I assume it's about how lesbians all date each other and date their exes, and it's like a small community, and so you're like exes and best friends and whatever. I don't know. 19 is called Mediation for Lesbians, which sounds interesting. It's about community, not relationships. Interesting. And then the last essay is called Beyond Community, Politics and Spirituality, which I'm really looking forward to because that sounds like an interesting concept to me. Yeah. And then, this is the thing. So I actually haven't ordered the next book that we're reading, but I was kind of thinking maybe we could do, because the reason I haven't ordered it yet is because the only place I could find it was Amazon, and I don't want to give my money to Amazon. So I've been looking for I found 2 different women's bookstores. One is in US or the UK, one is in Australia. So that's really close to me, obviously, in Canada. But I think I'm gonna contact them and be like, do you have these books? There's 3 books by Sarah Hoagland that I want to buy. Do you have these Sarah Hoagland books, and can I buy them from you? And so if it takes 3 weeks for them to get here, then that's that. In the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to read some articles out of the lesbian we're going to read some articles out of the feminist newspaper from Calgary that Aqua mailed me, because I have a couple years of that newspaper. So I thought what I'll do is I will go through ahead of time and pick 3 different articles, and we can sit down and read 3 articles out of this feminist newspaper from the 70s and talk about that. And we can do that while we're waiting for the books to arrive. I mean, I should order them today. No. Yeah. So Dr. Bean, the books that I try to get books that I think I will mostly agree with, or will be they'll be engaging for me in a positive way. So not postmodern bullshit, half the essays in this book. Yeah. Basically, if I want to buy the books that I want to like actually support women through the purchase of these books instead of giant corporations. Like I could probably get them from like some giant Canadian bookstore too, but like I know it's really easy to pirate second wave books because I don't know. We all know it's like we care more about the concepts being shareable than like anything else, right? But I don't want to oh, is it payday? What Friday is it? Yeah. If there was like if I was gonna read like Andrea Long Chu's book and analyze it or something, I wouldn't spend money on it. I would pirate it. So yeah. Also, I want to have like physical copies of these books, because some of them I feel like they're going to get harder and harder to get your hands on. You know, like there's a lot of books now that you can only get digital copies of them like for free from other women because you can't buy them anywhere. So I want to get my hands on this stuff so that like in 30 years when they're out of print, it's like I have a copy. Um, yeah. No, I'm mostly trying to buy. Okay, let's actually talk about it since we're here. So these are the next couple books I'm going to buy. Oh, I can't do screen share. I'm not on. Okay, well, whatever. I'll just tell you. I'll share them with you guys. Okay, so here are the links to the handful of books. This is for sure the next like book I want to sit down and read with you guys. This one. Then this book I definitely want to read on this channel, but I don't want to read like multiple Sarah Hoagland books in a row. So I think what we're going to do is read Lesbian Ethics and then some kind of a lesbian history book. And then maybe circle back to some Sarah Hoagland. Because you know I'm generally trying to do like theory, history. I think I decided that this book of essays falls under theory, history more than theory. Okay, this book. So there's this lesbian separatism book, which I think is so fucking interesting. I can't wait to read. Then there's this one, Against Sadomasochism. So this one also, it's like an anthology as far as I can tell. And it also, one of the contributors is Marilyn Frye, I'm pretty sure. Oh yeah, fuck. Even John Stoltenberg is in here. Fuck, everyone is in this book. How many fucking essays? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There's like 24 names on this list of contributors. Oh, okay, no, like 5 of them are editors. But still. T. Gray Atkinson, which I've never read but obviously need to. Okay, but anyway, I think this is going to be a fucking great book. It's like from 1982, the radical feminist perspective on sadomasochism. Okay. Then, right, so those 3 are definitely. Can we please do drugs when we read the Butler essay? Well, obviously, I can't tell you what you can or cannot do at home, but if you feel the need to do drugs to handle my postmodern essays, maybe you should not watch the postmodern essays. I'm not going to tell you to do drugs. If you want to do them, you can do them. Okay, What was the other thing? Okay, here's some other books. Okay, so as mentioned before about Lillian Faderman, she has a lot of cool books on lesbian specific history. So I think they're all pretty cool. This is the only one, I think, that is international. The rest of them are all American based, which, as you know, I get very fucking annoyed with very quickly. No offense, Americans, but like your country is fucking annoying. So this one is surpassing the love of men, romantic friendship, and love between women from the Renaissance to the present. So this isn't necessarily lesbian only, but it's like I think that she wrote it. I think that she took the perspective that she did because a lot of the times when all you have is written word, you don't know where the line is between romantic and non-romantic among women sometimes. But I don't know. Seems interesting. This one is American specific, but I think it's like kind of like Boston marriage type focus. Odd Girls and Twilight Lovers, A History of Lesbian Life in 20th Century America. Lillian Faderman tells the compelling story of lesbian life in the 20th century from the early 1900s to today's diverse lifestyles. Using journals, unpublished manuscripts, songs, news accounts, novels, medical literature, and numerous interviews, she relates an often surprising narrative of lesbian life. A key work. Yeah, whatever. Okay. But she's like an actual fucking historian. I don't know. The last book I read by her was like amazing, so I'm very excited to read it. This book I don't think I'll read on the channel because it's so America centric. No offense, America. But I think it's a cool book. So if you're an American, maybe you want to read it. It's called To Believe in Women: What Lesbians Have Done for America, A History. I mean, I don't know the contents of the book, but I'm just gonna guess that it's heavily focused on the fact that you know, lesbians have always been like ardent feminists, and so a lot of feminist gains have been accomplished by lesbians. I just assume that's what it's about. Oh, bye, Dr. B. Jesus Christ, possible person. I'll probably read it, but not on the channel, like eventually. I have like a very long list of books to read. Okay. And then this is just like my handful of like theory and history books that are going to take the next like, 4 months to read or whatever. There's one other that hit the goddesses and stuff. Where's my to read books? Load faster. Want to read 903 books. Lol. Okay. Okay. So this woman has a bunch of history books. She's a German anthropologist, I think, who writes about like matriarchal history and matriarchal societies. So I have 4 books by her that I would like to read. Well, if you think that's her magnum opus, then I guess I'll start with that one, Maple. Yeah. There's also a bunch of, okay, I'll just keep dropping books since we're like on a roll now. There's also a bunch of these books by Penelope Garcia, which I would like to read, but I feel like they're like for later reading. Gimbutas, she's on my to-read list. But I have like 900 books on my to-read list, so. Okay. So these books are by Julia Penelope. Sorry, why did I say Penelope Garcia? Julia Penelope. So the book that I really want to read is this Speaking Freely, Unlearning the Lies of the Father Tongue, which is like it's like a linguistics analysis from a radical feminist perspective. So someone who's read it before told me that the language stuff. Well, I've read, how many books have I read? I've read 627 books right now. So it's like attainable within my lifetime, I think. Plus, honestly, I need to take a lot of these books off the list because it's like I added them when I was like 13 and I don't have any interest in reading that kind of book anymore. But yeah. Oh yeah, here's my Gimbutas book right here. Yes, and this other Marilyn Fry. This is an even earlier. So the Marilyn Fry that we've read before was from oh, come on. Cooperate with me. The Marilyn Fry we read before was from 1984, I want to say. 1983. And this other Marilyn Fry, the last one I just linked, is 1976 to 1992. So it's a bigger range just of like essays by her. And you know, I fucking love this book. And I was thinking maybe to like set an alarm on my phone and like in a year from the last time we read this to reread it again with you guys. We'll see. Anyway. Okay. Fun to see the master list. You don't want to see the master list, bro. My to-read list is a really strange, bizarre mix of things. Yeah. Anyway, so there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's like 12, 13, 14, 15. That's like the next handful of books we're going to read is those. So, I mean, unless you are like, yo, this book is amazing and you have to read it and you mail it to me, then maybe we'll read that. But this basically is what we're reading in the next like 6 months or whatever, however long it takes. I mean, this book, Dragon says, I really love that you are doing these. I love that I'm doing these because you guys, it's like fun to do it with you. I'm actually really bad at reading nonfiction. Like if there's no like incentive for me, I cannot like finish usually a nonfiction book. So this is like a good thing for me. Okay, so this book has 353 pages and it's taken us, well, maybe let's not do it by pages. Let's do it by chapters because I've done each chapter one day or sometimes two in a day. This thing has 20 essays and it's taken us about a month. A little more than a month, I think, to finish this book. So, yeah, because we started it at March break, and it's now about a month. Yeah, it's now a month since we started reading this book, and it's going to be another week, probably, till we fit. So, it took 5 weeks to read 20 essays. So, I think generally, I mean, this book was only 8 essays, right? 8? No, 9 essays. And this one took like 2 weeks to get through. So I don't know. I think it really depends. It also really depends on the writing style. Like, some of the essays in the Lesbian Psychologies book, like the length of the essay is the same amount of pages, but it took me way longer just from like the writing style. So anyway, I'm also learning so much. I'm not like some kind of a genius, you guys. Like some of you seem to think I like know a lot of stuff. I don't know that much stuff. I just like to read things and ask questions. I'm not like a genius or anything. It's fun. Also, like with you guys, it's like we have a little book club every day, and like as a nerd, that's very enjoyable. Dragon says we're so small class size. Yeah, it's usually the average attendance is like 10. Okay. Ooh, yo, we also need to read the Dialectics of Sex by Shulamith Firestone. But it's like, okay, after these 15 books. Also, I think what I'll do is I'll order my Marilyn Fry books, and I'll order my Sarah Hoagland books, and I'll order my, what's her name? Go to Godner, Heidi Godner Abendroth. I don't know. I'll order the historian, like the matriarchal historic stuff. And then I'll just like do them in like a random order, so we're not doing all like one authors after one after the other. You know what I'm saying? Bye, Kaz. Okay. A bird killed me, and I'm getting an A of right, and then just like a stack of cash. Yeah, of course. It only costed you like £100 or wherever you're from. You're American, aren't you? $100. No, you didn't diss Dragon. It's all good. I'm just joking around. Okay. I'm fucking tired. I'm gonna have a nap. Yeah. Yes, I expect to be paid $50,000 if you want an A in my class. And as you know, getting an A from Benji University is like a very prestigious thing. You can definitely get a job with that. I'm not going to get into Wicca stuff, guys. Like it's such a huge thing. I don't feel equipped. Like I will probably touch on it with like the matriarchal history stuff, I assume, but you know what I thought would be kind of interesting, but I didn't think we could talk about it on my YouTube channel. But based on yesterday talking about like the different things women do in bed for like 4 or 3 hours, whatever, I feel perhaps we can talk about this. I was thinking of getting like, so what year is this book from? 1988. That's not very early actually. But I wonder what the earliest version of this type of a book came out. Like The Joys of Lesbian Sex. Somebody brought this up yesterday. Like a lesbian sex guide from like, you know, back in the day, and then to get one from like now and like compare them. Do like an analysis of the two, you know? Maybe not to like read the whole book, but to pick like parts of it and like compare the two parts of the book or something like that. Yeah. I just think like reading Our Body Ourselves on the YouTube channel is probably like a huge undertaking. How many pages is that? Isn't it like a 600-page book or something? Like the 1971 edition, obviously. Why is there like 7,000 editions of this? $1973. There isn't even a page count because nobody's read this edition. All right, well. But I had the sense it's a quite large book, and I don't want to read the like whatever the newest edition is because it's probably all woke and crap. Yeah, the revised edition is 784 pages. Oh my god, yo, I forgot about this book. Shit. Maybe this is what we will read while we're waiting for the Sarah Hoagland Lesbian Ethics to come in the mail. It's called the Lesbian Health Guide. It's like, again, an anthology. Actually, let's see if they have anything about sexual abuse or incest in this book. They probably have a better take on it. They have a section called Starting a Support Group. Safe drug use for older lesbians? What is that? Oh, lesbians and cancer. There's like 3 different books specifically on like lesbians dealing with cancer. It's very interesting. There's also like a bunch of books specifically on being lesbians, having sons, like raising sons. The section on dental dams is huge. Like the section on dental dams is like all of this, and the other ones are like these tiny little things. Interesting. Okay. I don't know. This thing is like less. A lot of it is kind of like, are you looking for help with this thing? Like, here's some general advice, and then like here's a bunch of phone numbers and addresses of people that can maybe help you, or you can look for help. Or something. I don't know. It's interesting. I was thinking maybe one day we can like, or I can like pick a couple of random sections of this and read them out and talk about them with you guys. Kind of in a similar format to how we would cover the lesbian or the feminist newspaper. Thank you for your recommendation, Maple. Oh, the server. No, I didn't start it yet. Oh, thank you, Ariel. Okay, we better wrap this up. I need to have a nap. I'm very tired. I also need to eat food. I need to eat food and have a nap. So, tomorrow, Who knows what's happening tomorrow? I mean, you know. Tomorrow is Sister Space, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific Time. No, wait, let me start over. 9 a.m. Pacific Time, noon Eastern Time, 5 p.m. GMT. Sister Space tomorrow. Yes, with me and Rachel, obviously. As always, go to my channel and set reminders for the live streams, or set reminders on your phone, like put a timer, an alarm on your phone, and be like, oh yeah, Benji's thing starts in 5 minutes, whatever. Okay. Thank you to Hannah, Possible Person, A Bird Killed Me, Maple, Phil, Toss Stones, Rachel, Clown World, Ario, Dragon Kittigan, obviously. Kaz. I mean, like in all the other guys. No, Dr. Bean, she's gone now. Kaz and Bean are gone. Yes. All right. Okay. Okay. I'll see you guys. Well, Rachel and I will see you guys tomorrow. Okay, bye. Wait. Momo has to say goodbye. I keep forgetting. Mama! Come here. Come, Mama. Come say goodbye. Okay, well, obviously she's just kind of going back to sleep, but I tried. Okay, bye. We support each other through this dramatic essay. Very accurate. Okay. See you guys. Bye.